get started then. 8 minutes past 2. So I'll just want to start off with a quick introduction about myself. Miran Ibrahim. I am a technical specialist here at Baker Baines, particularly in the AEC build industry. I have a structural engineering background and I worked as a structural engineer for a few years before joining Baker Baines. My main areas of expertise was multi-story residential buildings as well as industrial and educational buildings. And if you want to know something about me, I can catch. I always have to think about something fun about myself to share, and I think some of you have already heard about some of the other stuff. So this is just something that came to mind on the fly. So today we're talking about where are you on the BIM spectrum. So the BIM spectrum is just something, you know, that we thought about wording to use when we talk about, you know, your level of BIM, because there's a lot of things in between, and no one person or one company can say that I'm on this level or this level at one given time. You might be doing various things in your workflow that actually relate to various levels of maturity, so to say. But how we like to think of it and categorize it just in an easy way is that you could be only producing 2D drawings and not really bothered with much coordination. So you create your drawing and send it off in an email, and that's the end of it. Or you could be producing 2D drawings for construction and then also doing coordination in a 2D sense where you're overlaying your AutoCAD drawings and the like. You could also be doing 3D modeling, so using software like Revit, producing your drawings, but still continue to do 2D coordination, and perhaps you are also using a common data environment like BIM docs or something like that, while still doing 2D coordination. You could also be on the level of doing both 3D construction drawings as well as 3D coordination and using a common data environment. And then you could also just be like a Super Saiyan BIM master, doing everything in the cloud, everything's 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D, or all of that. So I would like to get a feel for where you think you would fall on the spectrum. And you can just indicate A, B, C, D, E in the chat. I'm not going to launch a poll. But yeah, just indicate A, B, C, D, E in the chat, and I'll just give you guys a few seconds. I think some people are maybe still finding the chat, so I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, so we've got a mix, it seems. We've got a mix between 3D model and 3D coordination and 2D drawings and 2D models, 2D coordination. There's not much in the C category. I think it seems as though people either stick to 2D or they stick to 3D. And so this webinar is really aimed at companies and individuals who are more in the 2D environment, wanting to progress into the 3D environment. Okay, so before we go on, just want to tell you guys a little bit about the company, Baker Baines. Some of you might already be familiar with us, but we basically play in four industries: business process improvement consulting. So we try and do assessments on your ways of working and try and see where we can advise what technology and workflows to implement to improve that. And that goes for software and hardware as well. And then something that we like to pride ourselves on is our blending learning approach. So that's how we do these webinars as a means of learning. And then we've also got CAD learning that we provide as an e-learning platform. And these are the various products that we make use of. We are an Autodesk reseller, but also we are resellers of some of the other products as well. And then we also do consulting work in terms of helping you to design and make a better world. And then we also do like to make this information available to you guys to absorb in your own capacity. And so we've got a YouTube channel, and if you guys are not already subscribed, please go ahead and do that, or you can just go and check our channel out. This webinar will also be available on YouTube afterwards as well. Okay, so in terms of the agenda, we're going to just do a quick introduction of what is BIM, and then we're going to look at the spectrum in terms of a typical project lifecycle. So going from design development to coordination, detailed design, construction, documentation, and then the inevitable changes that happen. And then we're also going to look at different levels within communication and document management. And then we'll talk a little bit about next steps. We'll look at Revit versus Revit LT, and then also going from some tips going from AutoCAD to Revit, and then that will conclude the session. So why, maybe I'll give an introduction to saying why we chose this topic, and it's just because we get a lot of customers that say to us, I want to BIM, and it's just like, okay, so what do you mean? What is that? Or you know, if you ask someone if they know what it is, they'll be like, yeah, we BIM. And typically they are referring to modeling in 3D, but that is not really what BIM is in its entirety, so to say. So what is important is that to understand is that BIM is building information modeling. That's what it stands for, and it just means that there's a lot of information in the design and building process, and BIM is a process or workflow or management system of this information that goes from the office to the construction field, and also just aids in that collaboration and coordination process between all the project members. And the information part is really the key here when we talk about BIM. What do you do with the information? Where do you get the information from? Can you rely on the information? That is really the core of BIM. And why it is so important for us is because really our work that we do in the industry is all about making decisions. And you need to have, you know, a good foundation of good data. And that data is information. And when that information is useful and you can do something with it, you've got knowledge, and you know, you typically would share information and share knowledge. And when you've got the right knowledge, this leads you to make good decisions. And that decision could be a design decision. It could be a project management decision. It could be a decision for the contractor. And so we need to make sure that we've got reliable information to make these decisions so that the projects are built in a successful way without excessive rework or unnecessary complications that could have been avoided if we just had the right data and the right information. So typically how things have been done for a long time is, you know, you make use of your AutoCAD software, and there's a lot of help and benefit with these programs. Number one would be the accuracy. So being able to produce drawings and information and give it to the contractor so that the building elements are constructed on the right place and in the right way. And you would then typically export this as a PDF, and this is typically sent as an email, and that's the end of it, right? So you've produced the drawing and you've sent it via email, and the information that's on the drawing is just on the drawing, but nothing else really can come from that. And so with BIM, there's a lot more opportunity to make that information more valuable along sort of the chain in your project lifecycle. So typically, this is a common image that just demonstrates in a traditional sense the design workflows from conception to operation. And the blue line that you're seeing is sort of the ideal of information that you want to maintain from concept to operation. So all the information that's being produced and uncovered from concept stage, you ideally would want to make use of that and gain value from that information, because that information could be your documentation, it could be your calculations, it could be reports. That's all building information, and you want to be able to create those documents at one point or one phase, and then be able to reuse that and not recreate it. But typically with conventional workflows, in the concept stage, you're working on your design development up until a point, and you've reached your deliverable, and then that information is not in a usable state, or it's not in a state that it can carry over to the next phase, which is detailed design. And so you end up having to spend a lot more time to create that new bits of information, new calculation, new drawings, until you reach your detailed design deliverable. And the same thing happens when you get to construction, and the same thing happens when you get to operation. And so there's a lot of opportunity here that we can use just to get some more efficiency in the way that we use our information. So if we look at a very rudimental project lifecycle going from planning to construction, it's not necessarily as linear as what it looks like here, but just for simplification, at the planning stage, typically you would use documentation, a 2D CAD application, and then Word and Excel is also very commonly used. And then, of course, there's a lot of meetings and gatherings and things in the planning phase. And then you get to the design phase, and you might use a combination of AutoCAD and Revit. You might use Civil 3D. If you're doing your analysis, structural analysis, you might use Robot or some other Procon, maybe, perhaps using SketchUp in the planning phase. And so you're using all these different programs. And of course, there'll still be meetings and some discussion during this phase. And then when we get to coordination, there's a lot of programs out there that can assist in this, specifically Navisworks and Collaborate Pro from the Autodesk software. And then there is always this continuous communication. And so the design and coordination phases can sometimes happen interchangeably or iteratively until you get to the construction phase, and you're producing your DWGs for the contractors and the subcontractors, and PDFs always, especially for record purposes. Drawings are still being printed and delivered to site, and of course there's still some communication, and even sometimes construction information or construction instructions are actually given over a telephone call, right? So the contractor calls you and says, what do I do here? And you give him an instruction over the phone. And even worse than that is WhatsApp. You have no trail, no record of the communication. And so that is just information being lost directly, and you're not able to reuse that information. But if we now look at the same data loss curve and we compare what we're trying to achieve with the BIM information workflow, so the red line represents the BIM information workflow. The gray is the traditional information workflow, which we looked at previously, and the blue being the ideal. And so it's not to say that BIM is the ideal way of doing things, but it's a lot closer. And depending on how you make use of the tools that are available, you can get closer and closer to that ideal. So even if you are using the latest software, the information trend or the data loss can still be very similar to the traditional information data loss. And so it really depends how you use these tools and what you're trying to get out of the tools. So let's go look at the spectrum basically step by step. So let's start with design development. You can start with a sketch, right? A lot of people still make use of sketches, even if they are using 3D software. And sketches is hard to get away from, I guess, but it is sort of like a very traditional starting point of your design development. Now we are at the stage where a lot of people are interested in doing the design development in 3D software. The software that's widely used is Revit, of course, and you can then progress this model and add information as you go along. And then even further than that, one level above that is making use of design options and generative design options within Revit. So with the Revit 2020, there's an additional add-on that allows you to use this generative design tools. We actually do have a webinar on it on YouTube. So if you want to see more information about that, you can check that out. Then in terms of coordination, super traditional is the good old light box. You've got two printed drawings and you overlay them, and you can see sort of clashes and similarities like that. But what is more typically done now is basically just overlaying 2D drawings in CAD. So you've got your various layers, you isolate the layers, and so that you've got your main layout with whichever services you're trying to see, and that can help you to do your coordination and spot any clashes. And then obviously one level up from that would be doing your coordination in 3D. And what's really nice with the 3D tools that we have available is that you can colorize the various objects, and this just helps you to identify clashes a lot easier. And so let's look at what that looks like. So this is what you're seeing on the screen is it's a snip from the model coordination module from the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So this would be the sort of the newer products that have been introduced since April this year. Previously, you might have known BIM 360 Design or BIM 360 Glue, those things. So you can do clash detection basically on this web service, web-based platform, and it's available for users who don't even have Revit. So you don't need to have Revit to be able to do this. But let's see what it looks like in action. So here we've got a building, and we've got various models that have been uploaded from various consultants. And so here we can now go and choose the model we want. So we've got an MEP plumbing model, and we've got an MEP mechanical duct model. So these models are now being overlaid in this viewer, and you can see we've got 357 clashes. And when you select on one of them, it will zoom straight into there. And because the plumbing model is selected as the primary one, the duct is basically clashing with the plumbing. And so what's really nice within this tool, you can now go and create a note, assign it to somebody, assign it to the person who is responsible. They will then get a notification and be told you need to fix this by a certain date, and it gives you a nice snip to show you what it looks like. You can do some attachments, and so this is really nice because everything is in one place. All the information is right there. There's no data loss, and you can go back and you can review these clashes one by one at any time. The information is right there. You can use it, and you can make your decisions fast, and also trusting that this is in fact a clash. So now let's look at the detailed design portion. So a lot of the times when we're producing our drawings, we need to add some details. So it could be anything depending on the discipline that you're in, but these details are typically what the contractor needs so that he knows what he has to build. Typically this is done in AutoCAD, and you've got some tags, and you write some text with labels and give dimensions and things like that. And then that's in a 2D environment. In a 3D environment, it will look quite similar because it's something that's going to be printed on a 2D drawing. But what's different here is that the lines actually represent elements. So what you're seeing highlighted is not only lines, but it gives you information about what that is. So I can see that's a detail item that represents a concrete block. And so you can, in Revit, what's really nice, because this is a sort of like an intermediate way, is that this is not necessarily modeled in 3D, but still the detail item that you're seeing has got some intelligence built to it that identifies it as a particular element of a particular size with material properties and things like that. And so if you wanted to take it a level up from that, you could have literally everything modeled in 3D and then add tags to it. And each of those 3D elements have got information that's attached to it. And so that is, in my opinion, not always necessary. I mean, you don't have to model waterproofing as such. I tend to advise, or I tend to prefer to stay sort of in the middle bucket over here, where you've just got the detailed items that has the intelligence that you need for the tags, but you don't necessarily have to go and model it in your 3D model. And so this just comes to, you know, what level of detail are you going to put inside your model? And this is where the spectrum comes in, and it's completely in your control as an individual, whether you are a modeler or a designer, and also it's in the control of the company as a whole who will set the standard. So there's basically 3 ways that I would categorize it. You could use just the standard 2D details without reference to any model. And so it's just basically 2D lines and text on a drawing. Or once you move over to 3D, you can model just the main elements of the building and then embellish it with detailed components. And then, of course, you can go a couple of levels up where you just basically model everything in 3D and you annotate the model with these intelligent tags. And so that's going from plumbing items to services to fixtures to finishes to everything. So let's look what this looks like. So you might have the 3D elements, and then you've got your 2D details in a separate drawing. Or you might not even have the 3D elements, you just have the 2D drawing, and this is produced in CAD. And so these things are disconnected, right? They don't talk to each other. So if you make a change in the one, you need to make a change in the other one. And then the level up from that, the intermediate level, is you model the main elements and then you just embellish it with detailed components. And so you've got, for example, the rebar that you're seeing on the detail is not modeled inside the model. It's just a detailed component that you add to your drawing that has got some intelligence attached to it, so that when you tag it automatically, that information is right there. And then the third option was everything is modeled, every single tag is intelligent, and if you change anything in the model, the tag will update as well. So what about construction drawings, right? So now you're producing your construction drawings. I think this is a very common image. This is the way that drawing offices used to look some time back. I won't say exactly how far back, but even I think, you know, not too long ago, hand drawings was the way that construction drawings were produced. And I think the biggest difference here between the way that things were done then and the way that things were done now in terms of construction is that nothing was built until the construction drawings were final. You know, I've heard the stories of using menorah blades to erase things from I'm not even sure what you call that sheet. And so the way that construction happened then is very different now. And so because producing the construction drawings obviously took a long time, and construction didn't start until that process was complete. And then we had the introduction of AutoCAD or computer aided drafting tools, and this is still very commonly used. And oh, thanks, Shafika, Sapir. Yes. So she also knows what I'm referring to, and probably you guys have heard the same stories as well. And so 2D drawings are great. I mean, this webinar is in no way meant to shoot down 2D drawings because it gives you the accurate information that you need, but it's just to indicate that there is a lot of room where we can sort of improve the way that we use the information. And then, of course, when you move over to 3D tools like Revit, you will produce your drawings in a very similar way in terms of the way that it looks in 2D. But what is the addition to this is that with Revit, you've also got tools for scheduling in the same place, right? And so it's not only one type of element that you can schedule, but you can schedule almost any element that you've got in your Revit model. And so that is when we talk about BIM. So we're not just producing a 2D drawing, we're producing information that relates to the geometry on the drawing. And so that's where we would like to head, because now you're actually getting value out of the information. So let's just look at what it would look like. So this is a typical foundation detail that you're seeing, and this is just to show you what it looks like if you were to create a construction drawing of this. So I'm going to start off with creating a legend. So this is just to indicate the various hatches, what materials they refer to. And so yeah, I've got my legend, and this is something that you could include in a template. And especially if you've got a company standard, everybody would basically comply to that. And so once you set this up, it's basically, you basically can reuse it from project to project. So these are some of the detail items and annotation items that are available within Revit out of the box that you can make use of. So you don't always have to start from scratch. Okay, so instead of adding text, we can actually add a tag because this has information attached to it. This pattern has information attached to it. We've assigned that whenever you see this pattern or this fill, this is what it is. And so I didn't have to type anything in. I could just give it a tag. Okay, if I now go to my my floor plan and I want to create basically a sheet now that shows this floor plan, and I want to indicate where this foundation detail needs to be repeated, I can just go over and drag the detail onto this drawing, and then I want to get a section on here as well. So I'll go in, well, let me first do the legend. Okay, so that's the legend that was just created. And because I have that legend, I no longer need the tags in the drawing, so I'll just go and delete that. Okay, so now I want to include that section, so I'm just going to drag it over. It's a bit small, so just make it bigger with the scale, and then just drag it over into position. And what's great is that all these views are linked with each other. And so if a change happens and you make the change on one place, you'll find it there, and also the views are linked to each other. So that is the call out that refers to that typical foundation detail. That's where my section is. And if I want to indicate that this detail is repeated on the other walls, I can then go and reference that, well, actually not the call out, I have to reference the section. So I'll select section, reference another section, and it's going to be the typical foundation detail section. And I can go and indicate that at this wall. And then this one. So everything is linked. Nothing is standalone, so that when you make updates, it will be reflected all around. Okay, so if I go and select this section view and I double click on it, it's going to take me to that typical foundation detail. Okay, so now I've got all three of my views as well as a legend on the sheet. And if anything gets added or changed, it will automatically be updated in all of the views. Okay, so what happens now when this changes, whether this be before or during construction? So you would have to go, if you're still in the 2D environment, you would have to go to your CAD drawing and update those changes. So this is just like a typical video of how to draw a bolt in AutoCAD. And so the only thing that I just wanted to also mention here is that you know, you would have to go and draw this, and even if it was already drawn, to go and make the changes, you would have to go and select line by line, object by object, and make those individual changes, not only in one view, the layout view, but also in all the relating sections, all the relating elevations, and that is something that becomes very time consuming. That's the one thing. The other thing also that I wanted to mention is that there is, even if you are still in the 2D environment, there is still some tools that you can make use of to make your drawing a lot more efficient. So that's using things like blocks and libraries. And I think a lot of people sort of just stick to this usual normal way of sort of drawing elements and copying elements, and not actually making use of the benefits that are available with 2D. And so that can end up taking, you know, a lot of time. Whereas like when it comes to, I mean, imagine you had to now go and make a change to that little bolt, all those lines and circles that are involved over there. But let's look at an example of trying to make changes and updates to a bolt that is in Revit that is fixed to a steel beam. So over here, we've got a bolt family, and this bolt family has got information attached to it that doesn't only relate to the name of it, but it relates to the geometry of it as well. So if you make changes to the length of the bolt or the size of the nut, you can see that it will update really quickly. And it's a matter of a couple of drop downs or parametric inputs that you just need to specify so that you can see these updates. A lot of these families are already available, so you can go ahead and make use of it straight away. But there are also some families that you would need to go and develop as a company, and it would typically be the ones that you use most often. But what's really nice here is that things are updated in real time, so you move the thing from the one place to the other place, and you can also go and in this scenario cut that hole based on the position of that bolt. So if I just hide it or delete it quickly, you can see that that hole is still there. Okay, and then when it comes to changes beyond this, so beyond the actual modeling and creating the drawings within the Design Collaborate or the BIM Collaborate and BIM Collaborate Pro, the tools that's available in the Autodesk Construction Cloud. There's also nice change visualization tools that are available that you can see a model in a 3D sense, and then you can compare actually two versions with each other, and then you can actually see which items have been added, which items have been removed, and which items have been modified. And this is something that's really cool, not only for the designers, but also for the rest of the project team or even the client. And sometimes, you know, you get issued, people issue you 2D drawings or 3D drawings, and it's just like, okay, now you're looking at it, but you don't actually know what has changed. And so what's really just useful to, or something that I found quite useful in explaining what the purpose of Revit is, or what it's meant to really help with, and it's something that I learned when I started here at Becker Paint, is that Revit actually stands for Revise Instantly. And so it was meant, or the software was developed to cut out all the additional work that is required when changes do happen in a 2D environment, and changes need to be applied to multiple views. And so Revit really does encapsulate this revising instantly. And so let's look at what that looks like. So here you've got tiled views. You've got 3 different views of the same small little house building, and you can see that there's no roof at this stage. There's no roof at this stage, and so that's what we're going to be doing in this video, adding a roof. And so while you've got all the 3 different views open at one time, you can activate the roof layout and then start to draw the roof. Okay, so here we'll just specify the overhang and indicate where that has to be from. Hit OK. The slope has been defined, and you can see that automatically it is updated in all the views. So here again, the walls are being attached to the roof, and once again, it's being updated all around. If you change the level, the roof is raising. If you change the pitch, that is being updated everywhere. What's really nice is with dynamic input, so you can actually specify the length and the wall, and everything that's attached to that wall will automatically adjust, and you can see this in all the views. If you wanted to move this door, again, same thing, just have a look at the other views. You can see that they all move accordingly, and this is literally instantly. There's no pausing or forwarding on this video. It literally is revising instantly. And so that's what you really want to take advantage of when you're moving from 2D to 3D, particularly using Revit. And then let's look at viewing the changes in the design collaboration, which is the web-based platform of the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And this is particularly useful when you are in design development phases of your project. So here we've got a building, and so this is two models being compared to each other. And here we can see the yellow is highlighting items in the model that have been updated. And when you click on it, it actually can show you the difference between the two. So here we can see the size of that model has been updated. This green indicates that it's an element that was added. So perhaps the structural engineer forgot to add those pad footings, and then he updated it, and you can see the difference. Okay, if anything was removed, it would have been highlighted in red. Okay, so what about when it comes to communication? So particularly when it comes to construction communication. So typically or traditionally, drawings were put onto plans and still are delivered to site, and the contractor signs it on an issue slip, and you take that issue slip to the office and you leave it on your desk and you forget about it. I mean, unless you are extremely disciplined, maybe not. But it is something that can happen very easily, especially when you're busy with 5 other projects at the same time. What's also done, in addition to dropping the drawings to on-site, is sending the drawings by email, right? And so you've got a CC in the client, the manager, the engineer, the supplier, the QS, the architect, everyone. And the biggest risk here is that you might forget to add someone, and they don't have the latest information. And we had a training session once where a QS was on the call, and she actually said that happens quite often, that the engineers very often forget to CC them in emails, and so the QS is not always working on the latest drawings. And we think we can all imagine the implications that has. And then for me, my biggest gripe with emails is having to find the things, you know. So it becomes really hard to keep track of information. And so with a BIM process, you would typically have a common data environment that is most likely web-based. So in a case of Autodesk, it would be the docs platform. And over here, it's a central location, one single source of truth. Everybody loads information onto this one place, and everybody can access it on this one place. And so for me, when you become used to using something like this, it becomes very hard to switch between decentralized systems of sharing information. It really makes such a big difference just to know that the information that you need is in one place, and knowing where to find it can really just save a lot of time in your day. Okay, and then this leads on to document management. And so, I mean, typically a file cabinet is how documents are stored, right? So even if you have a common data environment, even if you have docs in your office, you most likely have a filing cabinet as well. Things are a lot different now with COVID, and so you might still have this file that's collecting dust in the office, and it's like of no use to anybody. And then obviously now, because of that, we've moved to cloud storage. And so your central, your common data environment, like things like docs, is basically your file cabinet, but just put in the cloud, and different people have access to it, even if they are in different locations. And so docs isn't the only kind of cloud storage common data environment. There's also things like FTP sites and Dropbox or Google Drive, whatever the case. And so these are really good tools to make use of, so that information is available at any time, at any place. Perhaps you're traveling, something like that. And so that's a good, that is like heading towards or part of like a BIM process. But what's even more than that is tools that are available in the Autodesk Construction Cloud that not only house and centralize documents, but also other information that relates to the construction. So, for example, Autodesk Docs and Autodesk Build are web-based platforms where you can manage things like RFIs, any issues or clashes that happen on site, and those things can all be related to the drawings and the spec sheets that you've also uploaded onto this common data environment. So it really is a unified platform that helps you to manage the design information and construction information from planning all the way beyond construction, because these platforms will now become the place where information is handed over to the client. And in the case of alterations or renovations, the information is all there in one place. And so this is now coming back to the data loss curve. And so you see that how we go progressively from the traditional methods to the BIM methods, how information can give you more value from stage to stage. And then we get to the as-built. So typically you would just take a stamp, whether it's a PDF stamp or actual stamp, just put an as-built on there, and there's a big debate around, is this an as-built drawing or is it a drawing for record? But for me, I personally used to hate this because it's like you just finished the project and you just want it to be done, and now you have to do as-built drawings. And so that's always a debate. And then in a BIM sense, like I just mentioned, these as-built drawings will be something that lives on the common data environment. But in this aspect of the BIM spectrum, you can have additional information that relates to the building that has been built. So things like your completion certificates, your forms, any other project closeout information, things like lessons learned. I hope people do that. And then any specifications of the things that are actually in the building. And this is nice because it's in one place. The client knows where to find it. You know, you don't have to go and sift through emails or find a drawing that has a stamp on it. The information is right there, and you don't have to waste a lot of time or make any guesses. And then a couple of levels up from that is making use of scan to BIM services. So if you guys are familiar, there's a lot of tools out there, and this is some of the hardware that we also deal with. And this is particularly useful on renovation and alteration projects. And that's just because typically the as-built drawings mean nothing. So if you've worked on an alteration or a renovation project, you know that you can't really trust those as-built drawings. You end up going to site with your measuring tape or your laser meter, measuring up, writing it down, just to verify if the things on the as-built drawings is actually what is on site before you can start to do your designing. And so in a BIM workflow, something like 3D laser scanners would be used. And so this will then produce what is called a point cloud model, which you can then import into Revit or view on some other software. But it basically is the actual positions of elements in the building or the project that you are working on. I actually scanned our house with one of our pieces of hardware just to test it out and get to know it a bit better and things. And you can immediately see when the walls are askew. So we know, okay, tiling might be an issue here, for example. And obviously on bigger projects, it can give you a lot more insight. Okay, so we talked about various stages within the project lifecycle and the various levels on the BIM spectrum that you could be going from 2D to like full-blown BIM, and there's a lot of stages in between, and some of those examples, they are actually technologies and workflows that go beyond what we spoke about. But the idea is just to recognize that you might be on level 3 in one aspect, you might be on level 1 in another aspect, and you might be somewhere in between as well. And so it's up to you to identify, where you are and where you want to be. And so for us here at Baker Pains, when our customers say to us, we want to improve our workflows, we typically look at 3 different areas, being people, process, and technology. And then with all of these things that we consider, we also look at consulting, educating, and assessing. Well, assessing comes first, right? So you assess where you are, you consult, get some more information, and see where you would like to be, and then education is a very big thing to get you to where you want to be. So in terms of people, what can you do? So training, number one, I mean, you have to learn, you have to upskill yourself and see what's out there. And a lot of companies don't necessarily have what is called a BIM manager. But if you are deciding or looking at going from 2D to 3D or 2D to employing BIM strategies, it would be a good idea to designate a BIM manager. Sometimes there are roles that are shared between multiple people, and even if the role is not very specific, at least identify champions within your team or within your company. And I also know that a lot of people that I have spoken to are quite keen on these things, but they don't necessarily have the support from the management levels within the company. And my advice would be is just become the expert. There's nothing that stops you when it comes to training and learning. And so becoming the expert in one particular workflow is already better than not taking that step at all. And so yeah, my advice is always just take it in your own hands, and things are progressing so fast that it's not going to be a loss. And even if it is not a company adoption, at least it will be something in your personal capacity, your personal role, and you are becoming efficient at your job, because that's really what we want at the end of the day. Then when it comes to processes, you really sit down and evaluate your team's workflows. And when you do this, identify where the areas of strengths are and where there are areas of improvement. So if you know that the team typically takes a long time to complete a particular task, that is a good place to start and see what can you do to improve your efficiency in doing that. When you identify your strengths, you can start to think about, what is it that makes us really good at performing this task, and then start to extrapolate that into some of your other areas of improvements. And then, of course, you can talk to us. This is what we do as a niche consulting company, and of course, we are always keen to help and always keen to find efficiencies that work for you and work for your team. And then when it comes to technology, I think this is usually a big thing. People think BIM means technology, like you need to have technology to be able to BIM, but it's not just the technology, it's also the people and the processes that are involved. And so my first advice would be to make use of the software that you already have. If you've got AutoCAD and you're struggling to get approval for 3D software like Revit, because that is always a concern, then make full use of the programs that you already have, because it's about getting the value that you want and the value that you need with what you have. And then sometimes people don't always know, what they can really do with the newer software. And so my advice would be to try out the trials. All Autodesk products have like a 30-day trial. So download the trial, give it a try, see what it can do, speak to us. And take it from there. It will help you to inform your decision. And of course, making use once you start adopting the the program, making use of it on a pilot project is also a good way to become familiar with it and to get the team to adopt it without actually just like saying, okay, now we're doing everything in 3D. But of course, that is also a personal preference that may change from team to team. Okay, in terms of people, upskill, all of the Autodesk products are developed basically with shared knowledge, and shared knowledge is encouraged. There's things like online forums that you can make use of, that you can ask questions. I always search for questions because I find that someone else is probably struggling with the same thing that I am. The information is there, it's free, so make use of that. All the Autodesk products have got a help file. On the top right, you'll always see like a question mark help file button that will take you to some online support. Very good. So definitely make use of that. And then, of course, training and the internet. I mean, YouTube and Google are sometimes your best friends when you're learning new things. And then in terms of processes, using out-of-the-box detail components, for example, if you are switching over to Revit, there's a lot of out-of-the-box information that you can already use. You might find that you need to adapt it, but take advantage of the intelligence that is available. Just coming back to this example, you know, be consistent and try not to use lines or text. That's what you want with the intelligence. And this also allows you to remain consistent in your appearance and spelling and things like that. And you've just got better quality information and drawings that you're sending out. And then, of course, there are company standards that you would like to take into account. And all of these just make your changes and your updates a lot more streamlined. Okay, so this is just an example of going from AutoCAD to Revit, taking your details. So a lot of companies who start out in AutoCAD and they're making a switch to Revit, they're worried about all the work that they've done and the development that they've done in AutoCAD in terms of the 2D details, and they usually are very good details. And so it would be a shame to lose that information and have to recreate it in another program. And so you don't have to do that. So these details can be taken and imported to Revit, and then they will basically live inside Revit. You can create a library of these details that can just be reused, because I know that these details take a lot of time to produce and sometimes are very company specific. And so if you are making this move, take advantage of that. Don't recreate details. Okay, then in terms of technology, we get a lot of questions about Revit LT versus Revit. So mainly because Revit LT is more cost effective, but it's important just to know that this is a streamlined BIM software, and it is kind of like meant to be able to be something that is affordable and attainable for small firms. And it is, and it's particularly used by architects and designers, not so much engineers, and that is, and we'll get to that in a bit. And so you would typically use this for designing and documenting building projects and generating 3D views, of course. And then you can also produce your BIM deliverables in a sense that the elements that you have in 3D are intelligent elements that you can tag. It's got information attached to it. However, it's not an all-inclusive software the way that Revit is. So you can do a lot more with the full Revit, from planning, designing, construction, and actually managing the information. And this one is the one that's used by a lot more, by engineers. And that is just because it includes analysis and simulating tools that Revit LT does not include. And so you would do a lot of iterating and visualization of your designs, and then of course generate the design documentation as well. So looking again at the differences, you would use Revit LT if you want to just get a 3D model and produce your simple design documentation, and there's no extras that come with it. With the full Revit, the BIM features for architectural design, structural design, MEP engineering, and fabrication. And so you've got actual analysis design tools and simulation tools in Revit that you don't have in Revit LT. And you can import and export file formats like IFC, DWG, DGN, and PDF that you can't do in Revit LT. And what you also have in Revit that you don't have in LT is rebar detailing, linking with steel detailing, and then the collaboration, which is the work sharing that allows you to have multiple users editing the same model. I think that is the biggest difference. And what you get with this Revit software is Dynamo, which is a computational design software, and this is also something that's included in our generative design webinar, and we will be doing a lot more on that, but it just helps you to automate a lot of your tasks in Revit. And then there's also some insight studies available. So just again, you can see the differences between LT and Revit when you come to the options panel is that there's no collaboration or work sharing options in Revit LT. So you can only have one person working on the model at all times. With the full Revit, you can have multiple authors working on the same model. So perhaps one person is responsible for all the walls and columns, and the other person is responsible for the foundations or whatever the case. Or perhaps you've got a designer that's also modeling, and then you've got a drafter who's doing the details, working on the same model. With Revit LT, you're not able to do that. Okay, and then some other things, Revit LT doesn't include point clouds, so you can't import point clouds, which relates to the scan to BIM that we spoke about when generating the Ansible drawings. So you can't do a 3D scan and import that model. Curtain systems also are not supported, and that mainly affects the architects. In terms of structures, there is no reinforcement, as I mentioned, and you also cannot create steel connections in Revit LT. And then when it comes to the imports, there's no point clouds and also no GBXML files. Okay, and so the common data environment is another sort of fits in the technology bucket. It's not a piece of software. It's a web-based platform, and this is also something that will just help you in that BIM process of managing your information, because this is where you can control the publishing and viewing and sharing of information. Document control is a lot easier because file versioning and file types are recorded within the platform, and you can do a lot of reviews straight on the platform. People can communicate via markups if there are any issues, and it's a place that helps you to track your project activity as you go along. And so just again to recap, again talking about the spectrum, when you're looking at design development, you could either be doing sketches, or you could be generating thousands of design options within minutes when using generative design tools. When we come to producing details, you can have 2D details in your AutoCAD drawing, or you can have literally everything in 3D that has got intelligent information attached to it. When it comes to construction drawings, you could be stuck in a drawing office for months and months before the project actually starts, or you could be relating the information of the items on the drawing in schedules and doing a lot of things with it, and also getting a lot of insight from it. In terms of coordination, you could be using a Lightbox, or you could be doing 3D coordination, or you could be doing a combination of both. And I only say that because I mean, I worked in an office where we did 3D coordination, but we did also have a Lightbox that people used from now between time to time. And it also just depends on who you're working with, because you don't necessarily always have the opportunity to do 3D coordination all the time. And so you will find yourself going between the two. And so now going through all of this, where would you rate yourself now on the BIM spectrum, And so you might think that you perhaps lagging, or you might think that you're on a specific level, but there's a lot of things out there that you haven't been aware of. And so this is also something that changes from time to time, but it's just important to know that you could be on a different level in various aspects of the workflows that you guys are involved in. And so just in closing, I just want to mention the differences between a CAD environment and a BIM environment. And that is that CAD is computer-aided drafting, and the tool that you would use is a DWG 2D tool. And DWG is not the only CAD program that is available. There are others as well, but those CAD programs are computer-aided drafting, meaning that they make your sketches more accurate, and you can also reap some efficiencies in that regard. When it comes to BIM, BIM is an information managing process. The managing tool that you use is Revit, and Revit is not the only 3D tool that you can use to produce your BIM model, but Revit is the one that is most widely and most commonly used across the world. And so for me, I always tell people the difference is that CAD is a drawing tool, and it has got some managing features, whereas Revit is a managing tool and it's got some drawing features. And so you want to just make sure that you're using the tools in the right way and in the best way that gives you the most value. And so if you look at the picture on the left and you look at the picture of the right, what I want you guys to just take away here is that 3D does not equal BIM. Just because your drawing is in 3D does not mean that you are BIMing, so to say. And so your 3D model might look good. So you see Homer over here at the top, he looks like a person, he looks like he's actually Homer. But if you look behind, you know, there's a lot of nipping and tucking just to make it look like something, and that is a lot of wasted information and a lot of wasted time when you're producing a 3D model like that, because it's not something that you can scale. It's not something that you can get value from further down the line. Whereas your BIM model is giving you real information that you can actually do something with. So it's not just what's on the outside, but also what's inside the program, you know, the classical garbage in, garbage out. And so once again, BIM model, it's all about the information. And so now, before I say goodbye and before I say thank you, I just want to ask if there are any questions. You're welcome to leave them in the chat. I haven't seen anything come through. Let's see. Okay, so if you are still thinking of any questions, please feel free to just drop it in the chat. And I will just proceed to remind you guys about our iAdopt, and that is, you know, something that we do as a company, but it's something that you can also do in your personal capacity when it comes to all of these things relating to the 2D to 3D BIM spectrum. And for us, it's really about helping you to solve problems using and through digital transformation so that you can design and make a better world. So we really want to help you become more efficient. And if you would like to get in touch with us, this is our details. We do have support available for our already customers from 8 to 11:30 in the evening. And you're welcome to also get in touch with us on social platforms, where we will also be giving updates on our next webinars. And so I don't see any questions in the chat box. And so with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining me. I hope that this was fruitful and beneficial. And I hope that this sort of inspires you to identify areas of improvement that you can sort of level up your BIM journey in, and realize that, you know, you can take it bit by bit as you go and as you improve on your digital transformation journey. Okay, so thanks again, guys, and have a good weekend. and hopefully see you in the next webinar.